On April 16th, near the vicinity of Robotyne in the Zaporizhzhia region, Russian forces attempted a massive mechanized assault aimed at breaking through the Ukrainian Armed Forces defenses. Approximately 320 personnel, 40 pieces of armored combat vehicles, 3 tanks, and nearly a dozen buggies from several regiments of the 58th Combined Arms Army of the Southern Military District of the Russian Federation were involved. Air reconnaissance units of Ukraine's Southern Defense Forces detected the enemy columns in advance, enabling FPV drones and artillery to strike them preemptively. The first strike destroyed 3 infantry fighting vehicles, about 8 kilometers before reaching the line of contact. The battle lasted over 2.5 hours. As a result, Russian forces suffered significant losses. 29 pieces of equipment were destroyed, 140 personnel were eliminated, and 3 additional tanks were damaged. Here, Russian troops are conducting an emergency dismount from an infantry fighting vehicle in an attempt to seize dugouts and trenches. After dismounting the infantry, the armored personnel carrier retreats from the battlefield. Ukrainian artillery crews and kamikaze drone operators begin targeting the positions where the Russian troops have landed. In another direction, Russian troops also tried to break through to Ukrainian positions. With precise strikes from kamikaze drones, their armored personnel carriers were stopped. Many Russian armored vehicles were destroyed, but this did not stop the assault groups. They continued their advance, pushing forward through the fire. Ukrainian drone operators were prepared for this as well and continued to strike the advancing Russian armored columns. One Russian armored vehicle had its turret jammed, triggering an incendiary reaction that led to uncontrolled machine gun fire. The remnants of the Russian armored column tried to flee from the shelling, but they met the same fate. The Russian assault was successfully repelled. And here, a truck loaded with Russian assault troops was speeding straight toward an assault on a Ukrainian tree line. The pickup truck had no armor at all, and when it encountered a kamikaze drone, it became their final ride on Ukrainian soil. YouTube enforces censorship, but you can watch the uncensored footage on the Telegram channel linked in the video description. Their vehicle turned into a pile of molten metal. Some of the Russian soldiers, in a state of adrenaline, tried to escape, but in vain. This was their last trip. This is another powerful Russian assault. This time in the Donetsk region, Russian forces deployed armored personnel carriers and tanks in an attempt to break deep into Ukrainian positions and deploy their infantry. The plan was for the infantry to secure positions and wait for reinforcements. However, Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance detected their movement. and kamikaze drone operators immediately began striking the enemy vehicles. It's quite common to see Russian soldiers riding on top of tank armor during assaults. Up to 10 soldiers can be seen clinging to a single tank at once. However, in such cases, they are completely exposed and unprotected from any kind of attack. Russian tank crews appear helpless when faced with attacks from Ukrainian kamikaze drone operators. These drones strike relentlessly, destroying Russian armored vehicles advancing toward Ukrainian positions. Those Russians who sign contracts with the Russian army in hopes of enriching themselves by seizing Ukrainian land must understand it's a one-way ticket. After yet another assault, not all of them will be coming back on their own 2 feet. These are the Russian infantrymen who meet Ukrainian drones face to face and find themselves in the most desperate situations. At such moments, they begin to regret signing the contract and going to seize Ukrainian land. They try to hide behind trees, in dugouts, or even shoot down the drone with improvised objects, but in most cases, such attempts end in failure. Here, Ukrainian forces are reclaiming a tree line previously occupied by Russian troops. First, an artillery strike was launched on the area. Then, Ukrainian assault units advanced in tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, launching a coordinated assault to retake the tree line. Upon arriving at the forest belt, Ukrainian assault units quickly deployed and began to take up positions. At the same time, Russian infantry units began to retreat.
Намазать кінець цього ставка, блядь! По машині їбудуть. По машині їбудуть. По машині їбудуть.
The full video of the assault will be available on the channel soon. Subscribe so you don't miss it and be among the first to see it. Here is the Russian assault on the Turtle tank. Russian soldiers were riding on top of the armor, protected by metal mesh coverings. A Ukrainian reconnaissance drone spotted it in advance. While the pilots of Brigade K2 were en route to attack the enemy target, artillerymen from the same brigade began shelling the tank. The tank was heading straight toward Ukrainian positions, but as soon as the drone pilots arrived and delivered several strikes, the plans of the tank crew and the assault troops riding on it were instantly disrupted. As the tank tried to move off the dirt road onto the asphalt, it got stuck. Shortly after, a drone strike hit, causing a fire to erupt. Panicked Russian soldiers abandoned the vehicle and began fleeing toward their positions. In a state of panic, the Russians scatter chaotically. After that, Ukrainian artillery begins clearing the area. That's all for today, friends. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news. Share your thoughts in the comments. This report was prepared by Hustler. See you again soon.